Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Steel Podcast, where we talk all things Pittsburgh Steelers, no BS, just the real steel. I'm your host, Jeff, and I am joined by my co-host, Polt. And before we get started, we want to go through just a couple of housekeeping announcements, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So we have started a YouTube channel, right? So we're on video right now, and we've had a couple questions in terms of how we can be found on YouTube. So the best thing to do is search at the Real Steel Podcast. Include that at sign in there at the Real Steel Podcast, and it'll bring up our channel, and you'll be able to see our last video that we posted. Of course, you can still find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Overcast if you just want to listen to us on, 1.5 speed or whatever it might be as you go about your day. You can find us normally through those
And not
outlets as
look at
well.
our faces.
Yeah, who needs to do that? But if you want to see how we're going about this, I think you can feel free to watch us on YouTube. One other housekeeping thing. Unfortunately, we didn't get to record last week to recap the Falcons game. I was traveling for work, so I'll take that on me, Polt. That's my bad. It just didn't come together. But I
It's
think
okay.
nonetheless, what we'll do here is maybe give a little bit of airtime to the Falcons game, right? And then we can kind of jump in and do what we normally do, a little bit of a recap, maybe more wholesome for the
Yeah,
Denver game, and then talk about. I have a few notes in terms of where we sit right now, and then previewing the Chargers game, and we'll call it a day.
sounds
So
good to me.
I think what we should do is maybe approach this just by starting off with, the Steelers opened the season 1-0, a huge win on the road. We were underdogs, 2.5 point dogs, I think, an
Yeah,
18-10 win in Atlanta. I think you could argue that it was one of those places where it almost felt like it was a home game for us, with a lot of different fans. It really showed how packed we
yeah,
got Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But nonetheless, 18-10, as Mike Tomlin says, it's really hard to get a win in the NFL. So it doesn't matter what it really looks like on paper. A win is a win, right? We shut out the
yeah.
Falcons in the second half of the game. I think we should go through this and we can maybe agree upon what our key headlines were for this game, and approach it that way rather than a full breakdown. So I'll let you take the first one.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty straightforward. I think we all kind of agree on the same ones, and I think we'll have to start with the stars of the show, and not the one star. We'll go with the unit that was a star, and we'll talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I think they're the real deal. I think that's my biggest takeaway on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think I don't know 100%, but I believe that we're still the highest paid defense
We are.
in
Yes,
the
we are.
NFL, right? So it really shows. I mean, we played a really great, particularly second half, and there
Yeah,
were some questionable things in terms of like TJ Watt really got to Kirk Cousins quite a few times, and some questionable calls in there. We'll talk about that in just a second.
yeah,
But really, our defense just played such a solid game. It really showed. And I think, to me, the biggest thing here is that, we're going to talk about our offense in just a second as well, but our time of possession really flipped in this game relative to what it was at the first half of last season.
yeah,
And I think what that does is it really gives your defense a rest, right? And
yeah.
so they're not on the field what seems like 24/7 like it was at the start of last season. And so they're fresh when they get out there. They can make big plays, they can force
Yeah.
three and outs, and they did that.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what the defense did the entire game, they gave up two scoring drives. It was a field goal on the first drive of the game, right off the kickoff. So I mean, totally scripted. They've been scripting that for months,
Hmm.
leading up to this game, and they got a field goal out of it. And then later, towards the end of the second quarter, we had a broken play touchdown to Kyle Pitts, and that was the 10 points. We shut them out in the second half, and like you said, the defense looked fresh. They played a lot of different guys, and yeah, you could just tell that they had a little bit more, you know, in their back pocket at the end of the game, whereas they sometimes fell apart in the second halves of games last year. So I think that definitely has something to do with the offense.
And three turnovers that we forced in that game, two interceptions and a fumble.
Yeah,
Just a clean game by the defense, right? We know that, at least what we talked about last year, and I think this can take us into maybe our second point here. At least after this game, if we kind of think of this in terms of what we knew at the time and not what we know after the Denver game,
yeah,
didn't seem like we were going to score a lot of points, right? We didn't really put any points on the board offensively, and so the defense has to do a good job of holding the opposing offense to a low
yeah,
score, and we did that. So
yeah.
You want to jump into the offense? I think that should be our next takeaway. I think you told me there's some good things about the offense. Again, at this point in time, I think there were some good things about the offense, but my biggest takeaway is this going to be a repeat of last year? I mean, we didn't get any offensive points aside from
Yeah.
field goals, right? Didn't get anywhere near the end zone, it seemed like, and that was tough to watch. It was definitely tough to watch.
Yeah, our offense obviously, was similar to last year, where we couldn't punch it into the end zone. We couldn't necessarily move the ball, but I do think there was some positives here. I thought Justin Fields actually played a really good game, even though his stats might not look like it.
Hmm.
And I thought the offense showed some signs. So we'll talk about this for this past week as well, but we didn't really have that many three and outs. And in this Atlanta game, we only had one or two three and outs the entire game, which is way different, and actually is why we are talking about such a better time of possession earlier, is because we weren't having three and outs, and I think that's huge, and that's going to help our defense, and I think that will turn into more positives for the offense moving forward. So I know that they only scored 18 points, and it was six field goals, and it wasn't real pretty, but they had a couple plays called back for penalties, and I just thought Justin Fields and the offense looked better.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the stats. The stats don't really show it, right? But
No.
17 of 23 for 156 yards. I mean,
Yeah.
he had a passer rating of 91.9. He played a clean game. He didn't
Yep.
turn the ball over. It's quite a high completion percentage. And here's what I look at from the box score is I see 137 rushing yards for this team, which is a really solid showing in terms
Yeah.
of running the ball. Najee was 70. We know that Jalen Warren wasn't fully healthy in week one, so he didn't get a lot of airtime.
Yeah.
Justin Fields had 57 yards himself. But what did we talk about last year? What our offense really needs to do? We need to get the ball in George Pickens' hands. We should be targeting him 10
Yeah.
times a game. Not that we targeted him 10 times a game, we targeted him 7 times in this
Still
game,
pretty
but
good.
6 catches for 85 yards. That's what we needed to do. We got the ball into George Pickens' hands, our leading receiver, and that's kind of how it should be. And
Yeah.
so I think, there were some things that definitely have been proved upon from last year. And one thing I do want to bring up just while we're on this topic is, there's this conversation, I guess, going around about how we didn't use the middle of the field in this
Yep. I
game,
want to. Yeah.
right?
I'm
And I
glad you're
want
bringing this up.
you to tell us the quote that Arthur Smith went ahead and said, or what he, his logic for why we didn't use the middle of the field.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't have the quote at this moment, but I mean, it was a big deal. Everybody was like, "Oh no, Pat Fryermuth in the middle of the field wasn't used again. This is a repeat of Matt Canada." And actually, after the game, Arthur Smith came out and explained why that was, and that's because the Atlanta Falcons have Jesse Bates, one of the best safeties in all of the NFL, playing in the middle of their field, and he basically said, "I don't want to go anywhere near him because I don't want him to wreck the game." And it's similar to Raheem Morris on the other side talking about TJ Watt. He said he didn't want TJ Watt to wreck the game, and what happened? TJ Watt wrecked the
He did.
game, and they lost. And so Arthur Smith actually game planned around it. And if you look at George Pickens' route tree, you look at all these other routes, they didn't run much over the middle because he had no interest dealing with Jesse Bates. And I think to me that's a huge improvement too. It shows that we actually have a coach that
For sure.
isn't a pee-wee football coach. He actually knows what the heck he's doing and making sound decisions based upon what the matchup and what we're doing that week. I mean, one of our biggest complaints with Matt Canada was it was the same couple plays, same game plan every single week. Didn't matter who you were playing. Arthur Smith game planned week one to his opponent. I think that's a great start to the season.
Yeah, and ultimately we didn't see the production that we wanted,
No.
right? But at the end of the day, we had 6 scoring drives, right? We put 6 field goals on the board, and
Yeah.
that's what's going to bring me to maybe our third key takeaway is,
Well, just real
oh,
quick, since you
okay,
brought it up,
sure.
I just now in retrospect, now that we have 2 weeks, just to explain the Jesse Bates because I just found this. He only had 6 tackles against us week one. This past week against the Eagles, many will know he had the game-winning interception in the middle of the field, 2 pass deflections, 1 tackle for loss, and 12 tackles. Much, much bigger part of the game than he was against us because we didn't allow him to be. So that's
Yeah.
just the last thing. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you
and
there.
no, it's okay, but what we know now, being, a week late, is that the Falcons just beat the Eagles
Yeah,
on Monday Night Football, and the Eagles
yeah,
are supposed to be one of the best teams in the NFC, right? So
in Philly.
this win against the Falcons, for us looks a lot better than it did
Yeah,
after week one. But that again, let's go back to kind of my third takeaway here, or
yeah,
maybe our third takeaway is that, man, Chris Boswell, if he's not the best, he's a top two or top three kicker in the NFL. I mean,
yeah.
his
You can't
his
argue that.
his stat line here, a 57-yard field goal, 51, 44, 56, 40, and 25-yard field goal.
Six
Six
for
field
six.
goals, 6 for 6. Um, three of them over 50 yards, which is kind of unquestionable or unheard of for the Steelers, right? We don't normally kick that long. And we can go back. We can find the receipts, man. I said it. I told you this. I said we need to kick more 50-yard field goals because we have a kicker that can do it.
You said that last year. I agree. And you also said in preseason we did a longest field goal for the season over under 58 and a half yards. I said under. You said over. And he actually had a 57 yarder. So he was 2 yards shy of getting that over for you week one.
56-yarder and a 57-yarder, and he drained both of them, granted in a dome,
Yeah.
right? But nailed both of them with room.
Yeah.
So I think what this does is this opens up you get, you know, if you're on the 45-yard line and it's 4th and 3 with our offense, we're going to go for it. But
Yeah.
if we're on the 45-yard line and it's 4th and 7, I think instead of punting, Mike Tomlin might seriously consider moving forward, kicking a field goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to trust the guy. He's been lights out and was unbelievable. It was the MVP, had to be of the week one, which might lead you into the easy one here.
Yeah, let's just do it. We gotta, at least we'll move off of week one in just a second, but let's give a balls of steel and a Jagoff of the week because we're gonna keep track all season long. And
Yeah,
I'm gonna take the easy route here, and I'm just gonna give mine to Chris Boswell because I can't give it anywhere else. And it's not just for the 6 field goals, and it's not because three of them were over 50 yards. That punt that he came in and just delivered, and no questions asked, clean snap, catch, and a kick. And it wasn't the best punt in the world, but I think it was 40 some yards. And to be able to punt the ball when your punter went down, that says a lot. So it was a lot to ask out of Chris Boswell, but well deserved for my first balls to steal the season.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about that punt, and that was a gigantic moment in the game. So thank you for remembering that. I
I
also
didn't
did
forget
just
about it.
I did
Special
just
team,
add
special
something.
plays.
Special players. I did just add something. I think this is going to be a good tally. Over under four times you choose Chris Boswell for the balls of steel this season.
I'll purposely go under because I can't do that. But if we have six field goal games, then you can't go elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true. I
But
just
I
think it's
think I
funny.
think he'll get another one in this season, right? He's got ice in his veins. If he gets a couple game winners,
Yeah,
um, I mean the dude is just he's an incredible kicker. We
yeah,
gave him a bigger contract. I mean, so well deserving of it, and
yeah.
um, he's the man. He honestly, I mean, I think right now he might be my favorite Pittsburgh Steeler.
He certainly was the best in week one, so I
Yeah.
don't really blame you there. I'll go to who I think was the best, though, which I think is also a kind of a cop out, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's TJ Watt. I mean, I know his stat line doesn't look that good. One sack, four tackles, two tackles for loss, three QB hits, one fumble recovery.
That's a
But
great stat line. It's not like that
it's
was
actually it's actually not that bad. But from if you watch the game, he had two more sacks that got called back, another forced fumble, and another fumble recovery. So the guy was all over the field making huge plays. That I mean, he jumped. He was timed the snap so perfectly. The officials thought he was offsides. I mean, he was on another level in week one, and man, it was good to see him fully healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, I love that pick and very worthy of it too. So let's give a balls of steel to Chris Boswell and the TJ Watt. That's going to start our tally. And
Yep.
and while you mention that with the timing of his snap, that's just going to transition perfectly into my Jagoff of the week. This is a really great one where you could say, what's if the over under is 4 or 4.5, whatever you said, I it could go over in a lot of ways. My Jagoff of the week, I hate to be that guy. I hate to be the one that complains about officiating. But
Yeah.
if you watched this game from start to finish, you saw how bad the officiating was. And I'm not here to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers played a clean game because we're going to
No.
talk about this after week two and where we sit right now. We are not deserving of being able to claim that we're getting overly penalized because
Yeah.
we're making a lot of mistakes. That said, there were a couple crucial calls by the officials in week one that I think were egregious.
Yep.
And to me, that's going to give them my Jagoff of the week. I'll just say that the three things that really stuck out to me in terms of the officials. You mentioned the call where TJ Watt perfectly timed the snap and got called for encroachment or whatever it was, offsides,
Offsides,
neutral
yeah.
zone. Essentially, the refs after halftime came back to TJ Watt and said we were wrong, right?
Yeah,
Right? They said we
100%.
made the wrong call. You timed it perfectly, and it should have been a sack or a strip sack, whatever it was. That's one. Second piece was George Pickens got
Wait, hold on.
nailed.
Actually, I just remembered that, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, but that TJ Watt penalty, I think the next play, which he forced a fumble, the next play was the broken play for Kyle Pitts' touchdown. So I'm pretty sure that that fumble was, or the offsides call led to the touchdown. So sorry, I just
Yeah,
wanted to put that in there.
yeah, and that they missed it. I don't even remember now. They totally botched like a couple goal line calls, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there was that. There was an egregiously late hit on George Pickens well after the play that did not get called. Like George
Never got
Pickens
fined.
got effed up and it was totally missed. The third one to me was the missed roughing the kicker where Cameron Johnston got totally obliterated. The
And it was a
refs
penalty on us.
the refs threw a flag and they called a holding penalty. And Cameron Johnston lost his ACL or his MCL or whatever. His knee is gone. He's done for the season.
Yeah.
Clearly a roughing the kicker call because they ran into his plant leg and nothing was called. Nothing was called. We were like, oh, okay, at least we're getting a penalty out of this, right? Nothing was called.
Yeah.
And we actually got a penalty called against us. So to me,
And the
refs
offensive
very
pass
deserving.
interference on George Pickens on the
Yeah,
long catch.
I mean, yeah, there's even more, right? Not, but that just to name a few. I don't want to belabor this because we're, well over 15 minutes into recapping the Falcons game, and
Yeah.
we need to move on. But I'll give you the platform to give me your jag off too.
My Jagoff's just kind of a funny one. I couldn't really think of a good Jagoff for this. I went with Kirk Cousins' Achilles, and it's a good Jagoff for us. But I actually thought he looked terrible,
Hmm.
and just he didn't look like he could move, and it was a huge piece of the game. They wouldn't go under center because he couldn't step back on his Achilles, and so I'm gonna give the Jagoff to his Achilles because I think it really did hamstring him and help us win the game.
Fair enough. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll take what we can get, right? Thanks, Kirk Cousins. He looked a lot better Monday Night Football against the Eagles.
Much better. Yeah.
So maybe he just couldn't handle the Steelers' defense. Who knows?
Who knows?
All right, let's transition now. Is there anything else you wanted to mention on the Falcons game?
No.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and now kind of do the full recap of kind of where things sit after this Denver Broncos game. Steelers ultimately come out Mile High Stadium 13-6.
Another
Another
pretty game.
another very low scoring game. We do get a touchdown on the board, but Chris Boswell knocks in two more field goals, including one over 50. Great kicker. We do ultimately let the Broncos get on the board with two field goals in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So that leads to their 6 point score. But this to me was just another really incredible game from the defense. Now, let's not give let's not read into this too much because I think the Denver Broncos offense might be bottom five in the NFL.
Yeah.
I really don't think Bo Nix is good. They don't have a lot of offensive weapons. You could argue Javonte Williams is good and Cortland Sutton, but they weren't really utilized too well in this game. I do think Denver has a strong defense, and that showed. And so again, you can kind of say that our offense is improving, but maybe struggled against a good defense to kind of capitalize. But we did see some positive things here. So what's your take on kind of this game?
Yeah, and I mean, I do think with the Denver offense, just to touch on that real quick, I do think they might get better as the season goes on, just as they grow more and more comfortable. But I mean, yeah, Bo Nix looked very uncomfortable the whole game, and they didn't really run the ball all that well, which I think is a really good sign for us, and we'll talk about that later as we move on to the Chargers game. But I mean, yeah, if you look at like just the drive chart, the Broncos in the first quarter had 12 plays and 26 yards. I mean, that's all they had against our defense. In the second quarter, they had one drive for 41 yards, and it was 8 plays. So, I mean, we really did not give up. There was 20 plays in the first half, under 100 yards, and the defense kind of, I know they gave up a little bit more in the second half, but the defense was the stars of the show. They just locked down, and I don't know. I just didn't really ever feel like Denver could score enough to beat us.
Yeah, no, good points. I think I want to build on this and say these two games, and not to go back too much to the Atlanta game, but we're so used to technically both of these games are one score games. We win by 8 and we win by 7. And we're used to these one score games, but so much of the time it seems like these are the heart attack wins. Like you're so stressed
Yeah.
during every moment. And maybe we're one season mature and more mature and like we've kind of realized like what the team is that we're working
No,
with,
I
but
don't think it's that.
it really seems like that this is I felt a lot calmer and a lot more confident watching this team in both of these games. Like,
Yeah.
there's something about Justin Fields that, man, not only is he just so fun to watch, but he has played really, really clean football these last two games, and it's quite impressive. And that's not even to mention the fact that he has thrown a couple incredible, incredible dimes. I
Yeah.
really like the way that he's being leveraged in this offense. I think it's 100% what I was anticipating with Arthur Smith. And the designed runs aren't like the annoying designed runs where it's like
No.
it's just a QB draw. Like a designed run for Justin Fields is really going to be on like a bootleg, and I think he's a lot of times looking for different options before like play action is really coming into this. And
Yeah.
I think he's making some like really really good decisions in terms of knowing when to scramble, knowing when to leave the pocket, and making some great throws both in the pocket and on the run.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, he only had, what was it, 8 carries for 27 yards in this game and then 14 for 57 in the first game. But this game against Denver, it didn't really seem like he wanted to run the ball at all. And that kind of is my takeaway from both games. Justin Fields is definitely playing in a way that it seems like he wants to be a pocket passer and he wants to be throwing the ball. And I think that's a really good sign for us because his legs are a weapon. I mean, you can't deny that. And if we can get him to become a really good passer as well as having the legs, I think that's a great recipe for success. The one concern here though was in the first game we saw a lot of play action pass. I don't really think we saw much at all in
Hmm.
this game, and I don't know if that was another game plan specific thing that Arthur Smith drew up. But obviously that's one of Justin Fields' strengths. So I hope we can get back into that moving forward and try to use that. But one more thing to touch on, you mentioned the Mike Tomlin, another one score game. We That's his Mike Tomlin's 100th career one possession victory, and since 2007, we've played in 163 one score games, the most in football, and have won 62% of them, also the most in football. So we are very accustomed and trained to play in these games, and that's good for the players. And like you said, this does not feel like a heart attack this year, which is good.
Yeah. So interestingly, what I want to talk about is Justin Fields and George Pickens in this game.
Yeah.
Um, Justin Fields again, clean game like we mentioned, only 117 pass yards, only 20 pass attempts. Did convert a touchdown to Darnell Washington, which is super cool. One of the things I think I want to do at the end of this episode is kind of ask for a little bit of a prediction, not necessarily score, but maybe a stat or a certain player. And
Yeah.
had we been able to talk prior to this episode, I would have said that my prediction was going to be a touchdown to Pat Fryermuth. And I felt
Mm.
really strongly about it. And it looked like we had a pass play that set us up in within the 5 yard line, inside the five, to Pat Fryermuth. And ultimately we're able to capitalize to Darnell Washington, another tight end. So not Pat Fryermuth, but that was kind of my prediction. Pat Fryermuth ended up being our leading receiver for this game. But George Pickens would have had an incredible stat line
Yeah.
had it not been for two pretty big plays that were taken away. Number one, the touchdown pass that got called back. Number two, a 51-yard pass play that was called back for a holding on Broderick Jones that may have been the best throw we've seen from a Steelers quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger. Honestly,
Yeah,
honestly.
easily. Yeah, easily.
If you go back and watch this throw from Justin Fields, he's scrambling. He's I don't know, maybe 5 yards from the sideline, launches this ball, and it could not be any more perfect, falling directly into George Pickens' hands.
Yeah, and watching it now, he threw it from his own 45 to about the opposite 18. So I mean, it was a pretty decent, I mean, like a 30-yard throw and it was in the bucket, in the basket. It was yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. It's a shame it got nullified.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have it or not, but I believe I saw something that said had George Pickens not had those couple plays wiped out um by those penalties, it would have had close to 100 yards and a
And a
touchdown.
touchdown.
And
I mean,
and that's a really good stat line for who should be your number one wide receiver.
well, and you can't take away what he did, drawing penalties either. He also drew a 37-yard defensive pass interference against
Right.
Pat Surtain, who people think, and that's the other part of this whole thing. Pat Surtain was basically shadowing him, and a lot of people think he might be the best corner in football. So the fact that George Pickens is having the success to get open against that guy, and Justin Fields able to get him the ball again, he had 2 for 29, but still, I mean, he made a big impact on the game, and I think that's another great sign for things to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was cool to see a little bit of even with some of these drawbacks with penalties. We'll talk about penalties in a second. Overall, we did see some more production out of the offense, despite kind of the stats, right? Despite the box score there. But from a rushing perspective too, without over 100. What I say last game was 137 yards, I think.
Yeah,
100
137.
141 yards in this game. Najee, the bell cow, as Mike Tomlin would say, 17 carries for 69 yards. And Jalen Warren had 9 carries for 42 yards in addition to Justin Fields, right? So it's not necessarily that we have a two-headed monster. We almost have a three-headed monster with what you have with Justin Fields, and
Yeah,
good to see Jalen get some more action. This is kind of what I expect. I do think a lot of people anticipate kind of a 50-50 split between Jalen and Najee. I still kind of see it being maybe a 60-40, like a two-thirds, one-third type
yeah,
deal. And that's kind of what we got. So great production on the ground to have early in the season, right? Things
yeah.
picked up for us at the end of last season, and we saw this and we started playing better, getting better results. But we're having this week 1 and week 2 of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about the share there, obviously Jalen Warren was hurt in week one, but that touch differential was 21-4 in favor of Najee Harris. In week two this week, it was 18-11. So much closer, much more to that 60-40 split that we're so accustomed to. I think before we move on from the offense, I think we do need to give some love to this offensive line.
Yeah.
I think before the year started, and this is my biggest takeaway is how good Spencer Anderson's been. Before the season started, when Isaac Seumalo got hurt, I thought we were kind of screwed, right? We're coming in with maybe Broderick Jones probably playing right tackle, maybe Fontenot's back, but if not, we have two rookies playing starting, and then we have to replace our best lineman in Isaac Seumalo with Spencer Anderson, a seventh round pick who hasn't touched the field ever.
Hmm.
And he's been nothing but solid. I know in week one he didn't allow a pressure. I don't know about week two. I don't think he did. Um, I did not see that stat, but I just think he's been unbelievable. And then if you want to talk about not allowing pressures, I mean, Zach Frazier, he's been awesome. In week two, his pressure rate was the best in all of football out of rookie offensive linemen. He had 0%, 26 pass blocking snaps, zero pressures allowed. Talise Fuanga of New Orleans is the only other rookie offensive lineman to not allow a pressure, and that was only an 18 pass blocking snaps. So
Well,
Zach Frazier's been awesome. Baldy on Twitter loves breaking him down because he just pancakes and runs people over. And
hmm.
Zach Frazier's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and it's awesome to see him have success.
Yeah, it's great to see that. I'll be totally transparent with you. Had the first play of our game against the Falcons not have been a bobbled snap, if you remember that
Yeah, oh
miscommunication
yeah.
on literally our first offensive snap, and if not for Chris Boswell being an absolute beast, Zach Frazier was going to get my balls to steal in week one. I
Yeah,
think
he deserved it.
he's definitely my honorable mention. And again, I think worthy of an honorable mention in this game. He's played really, really well. There's still, I think, a little bit of communication that needs to be ironed out
Yeah,
from the quarterback center. But with that said, we're at a position now where Justin Fields is preparing to be the starting quarterback, and he's getting the full reps,
yeah,
through all of practice, or through the entire week. And so, with that, I think you see better communication between your center and your quarterback, and you
yeah,
see a lot of things start to click better, right? So
yeah.
that's how I take it.
I mean, and it's not just a new quarterback center exchange or anything like that. I mean, it's a rookie too, and he's trying to figure out how to block and snap the ball and just play center in the NFL with these bigger, faster players. So I do think it will only improve as he gets more and more comfortable. Speaking of that, Troy Fontenot, I thought he played awesome.
Absolutely.
He had an 8.7% pressure rate, so two pressures and 23 pass blocking snaps. I thought for his first action in at the NFL in general, because he got hurt pretty early in his first preseason game, I thought he played really good and looked pretty solid over there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you mentioned Spencer Anderson at the beginning, Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier. These guys really stepping up for this improvement of an offensive line. It hasn't been an issue, right? And if you don't have to talk negatively about the offensive line, um, I think that's a great thing. So,
Yeah, Broderick Jones is the negative. He had a really bad drive with I
yep,
think two or three penalties. Um, and maybe he'll be okay. I do agree with his comment about doing a rotation in the middle of the game is not the easiest thing for anybody.
yep.
So I hope that's it. But yeah, I think the offensive line, it was one of our biggest question marks coming in because of how bad the preseason was, and I think they've answered a lot of those questions.
Yeah, for what it's worth, just with you mentioning that, the Steelers released their Week 3 depth chart today. Broderick Jones is now behind Troy Fautanu
As he should be.
on the depth chart at tackle.
Yeah,
So you're looking at your starting offensive line of Isaac Seumalo, Dan Moore at left tackle, Isaac
yeah,
Seumalo left guard, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, and then Troy Fautanu. Of course, you have Broderick Jones as, an incredible depth piece if he can clean up his holding
yeah,
penalties. But he can also swing right. He can also play right
yeah.
side or left side. And then you have Spencer Anderson who's filled in really really nicely for Isaac Seumalo, who Mike Tomlin mentioned today. He's improving, getting better, and so we may see him this week, may not.
Yeah. All right, before we move on, I mean, we scored 13 points. We have to bring up a few negatives, or a negative or two, I think, right?
Well, I just gotta say, these penalties that we're getting in these games is just awful. And
And
again,
that's a negative against the offense. The majority are offensive penalties.
it's you know the Broderick Jones component you mentioned is a really really tough one. He had three holding calls I think on him this game.
I believe so.
Just really really downright atrocious. And I know you want to talk about the offense.
No, you're good.
One thing that really I really struggle with watching this team with penalties is in the return game. I feel like
Mm,
we can't get a return because 9 times out of 10 it's called back with a holding.
yeah,
And so that's really, really frustrating to watch too, because I think we have a pretty dynamic return game. Like we have some pretty electric players back there in the kick
Calvin
return
Austin
game
looks
with
really good.
yeah, in the kick return game with Jalen Warren and Cordell Patterson, and then in the punt return game with Calvin Austin, you would think that we should be able to capitalize on some things here. And Calvin Austin has made a lot of really scrappy plays from what he's gotten in terms of punt returns, and a lot of them just get called back, and we really really hurt ourselves. So we can sit here, we can talk about how seemingly poor our offensive production has been, but when you have really poor field position because you're getting penalized on returns,
Yeah,
and then when you're on offense and you're getting a 10-yard holding penalty that sets you back and you have a 2nd and 20, I don't really know how you can get yourself out of those holes when you're in an Arthur Smith type offense where you're not throwing super far downfield a lot. So that's kind of my take, is the penalties got to get cleaned up. And the one other thing I'll add is I believe the Steelers normally have officials come to practice on Fridays. Mike Tomlin said that they're getting officials for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's practice this week.
yeah. I think that's a great coaching move, as obviously they need it, and just to back that up. We had 9 accepted penalties in week 1 and week 2, and that is 18 accepted penalties. That is the most against the Steelers through 2 games since 2018 when we had 24.
Oh,
So it's been a long time.
do you
But
know where that sits in the league?
no, but I
We
can
can find
figure
it.
that out. 6 of those 9 though were offensive. So as we keep saying, as we're trying to get better and better and more, consistent on offense, you can't keep shooting yourselves in the foot. You know what else you can't do? You can't have no production out of other receivers other than George Pickens. And
Yeah.
this was one of my biggest concerns of the week and or of the year coming in. And I know that we had some faith in Van Jefferson and we still have some faith in Roman Wilson. But I think this is a really big stat after 2 weeks. Wide receivers not named George Pickens have a total stat line of 5 catches for 28 yards. I know the offense hasn't been good, and it's not like we're moving the ball through the air that well, but we are struggling outside of George Pickens. So I know Pat Fryermuth had a decent game, and Darnell Washington obviously had the touchdown, but we do need to somehow find production from somebody other than Pickens.
Yeah, so I'm very interested to find out whenever Roman Wilson is going to come back. I
He's
think it
practicing.
I
I
think
think
it's
he
going to
practiced
be
today with no restrictions.
yeah, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. And I think that I can definitely admit pretty early on here that I'm definitely wrong in what I said in the preseason, thinking that Van Jefferson was going to be enough at wide receiver too, because
Yeah.
he isn't. Um, he definitely isn't, and you've got to hope that Roman Wilson is going to be able to be a difference maker. Now, I saw one thing: the Carolina Panthers are booty cheeks this year, and Deontay Johnson is. They're getting calls that Deontay Johnson could be traded. I doubt that could ever happen, but man, Khan has done crazy things. I wouldn't put it past him. I,
Yeah.
I don't think that'll ever happen. But man, imagine if all of a sudden we brought Deontay Johnson back.
That'd be
Wow.
pretty funny. But yeah, and then my final takeaway, so we can move on from the offense, has been a lot of offense talk. Is I was a little concerned with the game plan in the second half. It from everything you read after the game, the offensive line was saying they were seeing 8-man boxes, and we just were trying to be conservative and run the ball, and then not get any yards on first and second down and be in third and long and hope Justin Fields make a play. And I don't know. I see a lot of people saying that's Mike Tomlin having a hand in the offense, still telling them to be conservative. We were up 13-0, so
Hmm.
maybe that is true. But I would like to see Arthur Smith, if he's allowed to, dial it up a little bit and get a bit more aggressive. We got aggressive at the end of week 1, at the end of the first half. I think I'd like to see us try to do that a little bit more again. So that's just a little gripe I have. The second half we got really stale and just the offense looked really bad.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about defense?
Yeah, let's
And
do it.
okay, I think I just want to kick things off by saying what a cool moment for Corey Trice to come into this ball game and to get an
Yeah.
interception. Steelers with 2 turnovers now puts us for the season with no turnovers of our own at a +5 margin. Again, really, really clean football, and that's a great stat to have in your back pocket in terms of being able to win games is winning the turnover margin, right? So the Steelers +5, 2 interceptions, one from DeMonte Casey, one from Corey Trice. The defense, I think, balled out. Again, I think the Denver Broncos offense is not and was not good. But we saw a really great showing from the Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those reasons is what we talked about in the first matchup, and that will lead me to my stat of the week. Actually, it's the time of possession. I mean, through 2 games, we are out time of possession, or we were out possessing our opponents 67 minutes and 55 seconds to 52 minutes and 5 seconds. That means we have a 26-minute differential better than our opponents last year through 2 games. We had a 16, or we had a, I'm sorry, that's 16 we're above. Last year we were negative time of possession by 26 minutes through 2 games. It's a huge, huge difference. We're in total between our 2 years, 20 minutes time of possession difference. And like we talked about in the first game with the Falcons, it's led to a completely different defense.
Huge. It makes such a difference, and I love that stat of the week. And when we can extend drives and not have three and outs, and sometimes it takes Justin Fields using his legs. Sometimes it just takes a team effort. Who knows? But it really, really makes a difference, and you could see it. Like you
Yeah.
could see. We watched every single game last year, and watching these two games this year, it's night and day. The defense doesn't look gassed when they're coming on.
Yep.
Cam Hayward doesn't look like he's about to pass out. TJ
No.
Watt probably isn't sitting on the sideline getting oxygen all the time. I mean,
Right.
it really is night and day. I love that stat of the week. I'm going to give you a stat of the week. It's not necessarily specific to this game, but I'll lead mine in just because we're talking about it now. Pittsburgh Steelers are 2-0, right? The last time that the Steelers were 2-0 to start, we won the division. That was
Yep.
in 2020. Prior to that, I believe in 2017 we started the year 2-0 and also won the division. And I think that there's even more behind that. So not to say we're winning the division this year, but this is really, really indicative of a strong team and a strong start.
Yeah.
So 2020 was the nightmare season, right?
Yeah.
That was when we lost the last four games in a row, and then the Browns beat us in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Nightmare ending. So of course that's still on the table that things like that could happen. But 2-0 is a really, really good spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's a
So
great spot, especially when our division, the two favorites, the co-favorites, the Bengals and the Ravens, both are sitting at 0-2. So we have a two-game lead up on them and a one-game lead up on Cleveland. Yeah, 2-0 is absolutely huge. So hopefully that stat you brought up will stay true.
yeah, and I mean, one other thing I'll just say on this is Mike Tomlin statistically does not do well in Denver.
No.
He statistically does well against rookie quarterbacks, so he had that going for him. But typically, he doesn't. We don't come out on top when we're in Denver a
No.
lot, and we don't go out there much. But we talk about this kind of West Coast curse that the Steelers seem to have, and to be able to get over that in this game, it didn't feel like it was, oh shit, we're going to Denver and we're going to lose. It felt like,
No.
okay, we have a fighting chance to win this game. So
And
um,
this was one of
that
those
was good.
potential trap games. I know it's early in the year, but this is one of those games against a bad team that we would normally lose. So hopefully we don't have that this year.
Totally. What else do you want to cover from the game? You have any other key
Well,
points?
I think the defense, I just want to mention how good this secondary's been. I mean,
Hmm.
what a change of pace we have with this secondary. We'll start with Joey Porter Jr. Another person ends up on Joey Porter Jr. Island. Cortland Sutton was covered on 23 of his 35 routes. Joey Porter Jr. was the primary defender, and he had one catch for 26 yards as with Joey Porter Jr. as the nearest defender. So another lockdown day for him. And then Deshaun Elliott, wow, what a great signing he's been. First of all, it's allowing Minka Fitzpatrick to do his thing and play Minka ball, which I think is again another big thing with this defense, giving him 7 tackles on the day. But Deshaun Elliott led us in tackles. He had 9 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and if you remember, that was the 3rd and 1. He completely read the play and blew it up in the backfield. And then they were 1 for 4 when they targeted him. So he's stepping up in the run game, playing really good at the line of scrimmage, as well as helping us in the passing game. So I just think that and Dante Jackson, I don't even have stats on him, but I thought he played well too. So I just think, and you mentioned Corey Trice, so I just think that the secondary has been really good. Demonte Casey had an interception. Just I think they're all playing really well, and I think that's a really big change because our we know our front's good, but can we hold up in the back? That's always the question.
And it feels like it's been a long time since we have had, I don't know if I want to say depth, but
Yeah,
certainty at the secondary position. We have really good defensive backs on
yeah,
this team, and they're showing it, right? How many times over the last few years have we been able to stop the run game? We have a solid linebacking core, and we get picked apart through the air because our
yep,
secondary is just quite frankly not good.
yeah.
Those guys that you mentioned have played really, really strong first two games, and what I think is really cool is, as you mentioned, the additions to this team, like the key off-season acquisitions of Deshaun Elliott, of Patrick Queen, right? Like Corey Trice, not an acquisition, but kind of getting to show in
Yeah.
in his this year. Beanie Bishop stepping up from a rookie
Dante
perspective.
Jackson,
Dante Jackson at corner, right?
Peyton
Really,
Wilson.
really, really great stuff. Yeah, and I hope I'm not stealing your balls of steel, but I have to do this just because I think this guy is really, really deserving of a game. And you read his stat line, but Deshaun Elliott is my
Yeah.
balls of steel this week. Um, you mentioned his stat line: 9 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 completion when he was targeted 4 times, and um, just an incredible acquisition through free agency. And I think he makes a real, real difference for this team and had himself a great week. So
Yeah. Great balls of steel. I apologize for taking all those stats from
no,
you, but I actually thought you were going to go for my balls of steel, which is also in the secondary. I got to give it to Corey Trice, man.
yeah, I like that.
I mean, wow, he played 18 coverage snaps, allowed 9 receiving yards, a 90.1 coverage grade, a 22.9 passer rating allowed, and an unbelievable just I mean, just having his head in the game and being a good football mind interception. Like he read that play perfectly, especially out of a guy. This is game 2 for him. We got to remember. I know he's a second year player, but he's really a rookie. And in game
Hmm.
2 to be able to sag off of his defender because nobody was there and make a read on a wide open receiver and save a touchdown was absolutely huge in this game. We only won by 7, and that was a wide open touchdown if he doesn't make that play. So Corey Trice is very easily my balls of steel.
I love that pick. He was my honorable mention, and I would
Yeah,
encourage any listeners to, if you have the chance, Google Corey Trice and read about his story. This
yeah,
guy's gone through
yeah,
a ton of uncertainty, and imagine coming into the NFL and getting drafted and getting hurt in camp your rookie season. And
yeah,
he's gone through a lot of adversity. I think he lost his father and just a ton of stuff that this guy's gone through. Um,
yeah,
and so deserving of that interception
yeah.
and getting some play time. I love to see it. And it builds on what we said last year, right? They said that at the beginning of camp, Corey Trice was really a shining star.
Yeah, the avatars.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was laughing because did you see the video? If you watch back the all 22 version of his interception, you can see TJ Watt as soon as Corey Trice gets up off the ground, he's like, "Come on, Corey, over here!" And he's pointing to the camera because the defenders love to go to the camera, and
Yeah.
he's like, he doesn't know where he's going. So TJ Watt was trying to help him. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's funny. I love it. Do you want to give a Jagoff or do you need to wait a little bit?
I could give a Jagoff.
Let's have you go.
All right, I we didn't really go in depth about the game too much because to be honest with you, there wasn't really much to talk about, drives and stuff like that. But my Jagoff of the week is actually going to go to Sean Payton, and I feel go
What's up
ahead.
with you giving all these Jagoffs to the other team?
Well, because he
It's
was a Jagoff.
okay. Let's
He,
hear it.
he basically won us the game. I thought he made some terrible decisions and decisions that again ultimately led us to win the game. Uh, so it was 13-0 and their first scoring drive. There's 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and he kicks a 35-yard field goal from our own 16 on a 4th and 6. I mean, we were up by 13, kicking that field goal kept it a 2-score game. I I don't know what that did for them. And then at the end of the game, they kicked the other field goal with 2 minutes left and one timeout, and he doesn't onside kick it. Like I get
Yeah.
that the new rules make it really hard to onside kick, but they got the ball back with 18 seconds. He kind of just like waved the white flag, only down by 7. So that's why I think he's the Jagoff of the week. I think you could have given it to a couple Steelers, but that's why I think he is.
Okay. That's fine. That's fair enough.
You
I
didn't like
think
that.
it's all right. It's going to impact mine. I had a kind of a creative one that I was going to go with, which we'll talk about in a second. But I
Go
think
for it.
because you didn't take the cop out, I can't not give a Jagoff of the week to Broderick Jones right now. Um,
That's fair.
3 penalties, got himself benched, and sure, you could probably argue that some of those calls were ticky tacky, but to
Nah.
me, and I've read a few things and listened to a few things. Typically, most NFL players, if you make an error and get called for a penalty, you are overcompensating the next few times that you're playing
Yeah.
to essentially show that like you're not gonna do anything to regress back to what caused that penalty,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like Broderick Jones maybe didn't make any type of adjustment and took away what would have been the best play of the game and Justin Fields maybe best throw of his career. And again, I said it. might have been the best throw we've seen from a Steelers quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger. So I'm a little bit bummed at that. And so Broderick Jones is going to get it. The honorable mention that I wanted to give a little bit too. This takes us a little bit outside of the game, but Steelers reporters are really starting to piss me off, particularly with the question around Russell Wilson.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So I've watched, all of Mike Tomlin's post game and post game conferences and the Tuesday conferences and everything, right? I don't know if it's a conspiracy if Russell Wilson's hurt or not. I don't really know what's going on with his calf tightness, calf injury,
I
whatever
think
it
he's
might
hurt.
be. I would assume that he's probably hurt in some capacity. The Steelers reporters need to freaking lay off the fact that like we even need to think about if Russell Wilson's healthy, is he the starting quarterback? Like you need to prepare that Justin Fields is your starting quarterback right now. He's done a damn good job the first two games, played super clean, and these guys, men and women, need to get off of that question of if Russell Wilson's healthy, is he the starting quarterback? Quite frankly, I don't care. Quite frankly, Miami should be getting on the phone with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now saying, we'll give you a first or second rounder for Russell Wilson. Like, not saying Russell Wilson is dead to me. It's great. You kind of need two quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah.
Because God forbid, who knows what's going to happen or what can happen. But I'm just so sick and tired of these Steelers reporters, man. Do you not agree?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I guess I just kind of I come to expect it at this point. It's a controversy, and they're trying to play it up. I'm with you. I think that's a pretty good one. That's why I was laughing. I thought it was pretty funny.
I don't see it as controversy because the way I see it and the way Mike Tomlin coaches
Oh,
is
I think
it.
he's part of the problem why it's a controversy. They made it such a big deal that it was Russell Wilson's job, even though Justin Fields did the whole camp and they hid how bad the injury was. And I think it's partly the team's fault. So
Yeah,
the reporters are annoying. I agree with that. But
but I think Mike Tomlin knows better, right? And he's always been someone that says your job's not your job if you get hurt and someone comes in and does better than you. So I don't think that this is Russell Wilson's job. I think if Russell Wilson's fully healthy, I think you're playing Justin Fields until Justin Fields makes a significant mistake, to be honest with you, at this point. I
yeah,
really do.
and you and I on the same page there. I mean, I thought week one he should have started. Um, I think he hasn't done anything wrong enough to pull him, but
Well,
you never know what
you,
they're
me,
gonna
and
do.
you, me, and Dan Orlovsky that feel that way. As I'm sure there's probably a lot of other people in the Steelers fan base who feel that way too. Russell Wilson is not going to play to the capacity that Justin Fields would. So,
And he's not our future. Like,
yeah,
let's give Fields a chance.
yeah. So, go ahead. I see you
But
ready to
no,
say
no, no.
something.
Well, no, yeah. I just two more things, just real quick,
Mhm.
because we didn't touch on special teams at all. Uh, I think you got to give a shout. You ready to go? Do you
No,
want to
special
take it?
teams, special players.
Okay. Is that going to be every week? Um, Chris Boswell. Did you know he is outscoring the entire Giants football team? He has
25 to
25 points.
24, yeah?
Yeah, pretty good. Another two for two performance, and then we got to give a quick shout out to Corliss Waitman,
How
man.
about it, baby?
8 punts coming in just this week. 8 punts, 53-yard average, 58 long. Nothing crazy about it, but he did his job and he did better than what we had the last couple years. So I loved it.
I would actually argue that there is something crazy about it. I think that's phenomenal punting. If you watched his punts,
Yeah,
he got pretty unlucky with some touchbacks.
yeah, he
Um,
did. You're right. You're right.
he pinned like I guess the definition of pinning is it actually has to end there.
Yeah,
But he placed a lot of punts inside the 10-yard line that rolled into the end zone. Corliss Waitman had a phenomenal punting game, and again, this is probably in our best interest that we didn't have an episode after last week because I was pissed the F off with what happened to Cameron Johnson,
yeah, that
and
did suck.
I was really yeah, I'm glad it's coming up because I'd be upset if it didn't come up in some capacity. Um, I was so happy that we had a good punter and that he was playing well, and Mike Tomlin loved him, and the team loved him. And man, I looked. I couldn't even find out what the extent of the injury was. I assume it's an MCL or an
It's an
ACL.
ACL.
It's an
Yeah,
ACL.
yeah, he's done. I mean, yeah, that's
But
funny. You are the punting expert. You are the special teams guy, so it makes sense. I will say, week one, Johnston only had 2 punts. And I'd much rather prefer that over the 8 punts that Waitman had. But
Yeah.
hey, he stepped up and did his job, and we appreciate that. All right, my second thing is, can I give out a quote of the week?
Yeah, but can I finish? Can I give
Oh,
you a
you're
stat
still
of the week
going?
that I didn't give from last week?
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
think I think it's well known because get out of here.
Is it
I
punting?
It's not punting, but it's field goal kicking.
Okay, fair.
I think it's well known because it was stated on the broadcast, but just gotta
Hmm.
again give kudos to Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell is the most accurate kicker beyond 50 yards in NFL history. No Justin Tucker, no
Just,
Harrison Butker, none of
Justin
these other guys.
Tucker is they've there's only been 2 misses over 50 yards this year, and both were him.
Justin Tucker's booty this year.
Wait,
Chris Boswell is incredible, and I wanted to mention that my stat of the week is Chris Boswell's percentage from 50-yard plus is actually better than his percentage from 40-yard plus. Chris
wow.
Boswell is the NFL like how do I say it? He all-time NFL leader in field goal percentage beyond 50 yards. So
Yeah.
cool stat. Go ahead with yours.
No, they
With your
they
quote.
screwed up that graphic though. If you look at it, I thought it was really funny. They didn't give the 40-year-old Matt Prater any love. They had him the NFL logo there. He's the kicker for the Cardinals right now. So they didn't give him any love. I thought that was
Did
pretty
he like
funny.
retire and unretire or
Maybe,
I don't
but I
know.
mean, he was the week 1 kicker and still is. So
That's
I
funny.
thought that was pretty funny. No, this is a new thing. Just probably will be a one-time thing. I got to give out a quote of the week as we finish up this Denver conversation.
Hmm.
The rumor is after the game they gave Russell Wilson a petty game ball.
Yeah.
According that is Justin Fields' quote. That is not my quote. When asked in his press conference today, Mike Tomlin said, "I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it."
Love it.
Thought that was
It's a
hilarious.
new
So
one. It's a new Tomlinism. I
it's a brand new Tomlinism.
haven't heard anything like that, but man's full of quotes. Um,
Yes, he is.
let's tie a bow on this. Couple things that I want to mention that we didn't get to mention, just kind of in terms of where we sit now. From an injury perspective, we talked about Roman Wilson practicing, Isaac Seumalo improving. Russell Wilson is just a question mark. Don't really know what that looks like, quite frankly. I'm okay with it. The big news from Steelers injury today is Tyler Matakevich got put on IR. That's a really big loss in special teams. A really good depth
Yeah.
piece. You remember he was a Steeler a few years back. We re-signed him this year. So that's a big loss for the Steelers. I also mentioned, yeah, Steelers are 2-0, sitting well there. We talked a little bit about the wide receiver two debacle. Um, and I just got to say again, like, it's really fun watching Justin Fields. I didn't think I was
It
gonna
is.
feel this way, and he's exciting to watch. And I watched the full Eagles game this week too, Eagles against the Falcons, and Jalen Hurts is a really really good quarterback. And like watching Jalen Hurts, I was like, we have Jalen Hurts, we have a Jalen Hurts, we have Justin Fields.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was cool. I
You
liked it.
you having positive things to say about Justin Fields just makes me laugh because of how
Yeah.
much you hated him a couple years ago.
Well,
But
going to
hey,
Ohio State, it's
things
not a
can
not
change.
a good start.
One more injury you missed was Mikel Pruitt. He got hurt in
Yes.
that game, hurt his knee. Connor Hayward did have one of our penalties, so maybe look out for that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's transition. Last few minutes here. Talk about the Chargers game. Home opener. 1 o'clock game at Acrisure. Um, I think we're opening as 1.5 point favorites, which at home is nothing.
Yep.
Not really giving us too much there. What I want to highlight about the Los Angeles Chargers is I think they're kind of a team like us.
Yep.
They're a run first team. They have these two running backs that are familiar with the Steelers that they got from the Ravens. Um, their coach is a Harbaugh, so more room to dislike them here. And despite them losing some of their big names at wide receivers and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, they have a couple first rounders. Or I don't know if Lad McConkey was drafted in the first round.
No, but that's
But
okay.
Quentin Johnson was a first round wide receiver. Lad McConkey's a rookie. He's a talented guy. Josh Palmer is a pretty good wide receiver. They have some weapons, and so they shouldn't be taken lightly. The one other thing I want to say here is I know you'll hopefully give us some stats. Early on, when we had our first episode and we talked preseason, you picked this as a win.
Yep. I
I
was waiting
picked
for this.
I picked this as the Steelers' first loss. I hope it doesn't happen, but I think this is the first challenge for the Steelers of the season, and so
Yeah.
um, if we can get through this, then I think we might have a real future with the team this season. If we don't get past this game, then I think it's kind of gonna fall similar to what I thought and kind of be that 9-8 type season.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue this might be like I mean, it's our biggest test yet, right? But looking at it, I think what it really is going to come down to is in the rushing game. And if you look at what Atlanta did to the Eagles last night, they had 152 rushing yards. Against us, they only had 89. So I'm hoping our rush defense can hold because the Chargers are one of the better rushing teams, and with that, yeah, the Chargers are the second best rushing team in the NFL.
Hmm.
They're the 28th best passing team. By comparison, we're the 12th best rushing team and 30th best passing team. So very similar there offensively, but they score a lot more points than us. They're averaging 24 points per game. That's 11th in the league. We're averaging 15 and a half, which is 26th. So very, very similar in offense. They're going to try to run the ball, time of possession, run the ball, have some Justin Herbert big time plays if he plays because he is
Hmm.
coming off a little bit of an injury. And then on the defensive side of the ball, their defense is killing it right now. They're first in points allowed, allowing 6.5 points this year per game in 2 games. We're allowing 8 in 2 games, so we're right behind them in second. But their pass defense is sixth, and their rush defense is sixth. So they have a pretty strong defense. So let's see what we can do against them. Let's see, maybe the stats are skewed on both sides. I don't really know, but I really do look like the game is going to come down to can our run defense, who is fourth in the league, can we slow down and stop the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards rushing attack of the Los Angeles Chargers?
For
And
sure.
I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm excited for the game. It's a good home opener. To have two wins under your belt with two away games
Yeah,
is a really, I would say, astonishing feat, honestly, for this team.
yeah,
And so we have a lot of momentum, right? Let's hope that that momentum doesn't kind of fall down and crash, and the
yeah.
Steelers really kind of capitalize. Okay, what I want to close out here with is,
Well,
oh, you have something you want to?
are you changing your prediction or
You know me, I don't give predictions. You're the one who gives the
do you
scores.
still think we're gonna lose?
I don't know, man. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not going to say we're going to lose. I think we win, but I
We're winning,
won't be
20 to
surprised if
17.
that 20-17. Okay,
20 to
so
17.
another one score game, close game, but you think we get 20 on the board?
And we're going over, baby.
Hit
It's
the
thir-
over?
it's like 35 or 35 and a half. So I think we
Okay.
hit the over today or this
Okay.
weekend.
Okay, fair enough. What I want to ask you, what I want to close out with is
Yep.
aside from the score prediction, aside from kind of the win-loss prediction, I don't want this to necessarily be bet oriented. It
No.
certainly can be, but I want to ask you, I won't put you on the spot. I'll go first to give you some time to think. But I want to go through for both of us a prediction or a stat line or some type of projection. Like it could be stat based, it could be player based,
Yep.
whatever it might be. Something like someone's going to get a touchdown, someone's going to do this, or we're going to be up by X at the half. Whatever you think, I want to introduce this kind of component to each
I
of the
like this.
episodes to close things out. I'm going to start. I think George Pickens gets 100 yards receiving this year, this week.
Okay. I like that.
I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to need to throw the ball a little bit more than we have before. And I think it's pretty clear that Russell Wilson, oh my God. I think it's pretty
Maybe
clear that
you're
all this
part of the
talk about,
media.
yeah, but freaking Jagoff. I, I think it's pretty clear that Justin Fields' favorite target on this team is George Pickens. And I think we're going to see a 100-yard game out of him. So I'm probably going to bet on that. I think that's a good thing to, safely, not safely, but I think that's a good thing to maybe,
Responsibly.
yeah, responsibly, get more responsibly. I think that's a good thing to, yeah, to hope for. I feel like it can happen.
Okay. I actually was thinking something very similar. I feel like it's probably less bold, but I think it's going to be the Jalen Warren coming out game.
Huh?
I think he's
Okay.
finally, I hope he's, another week healthier, and I'm projecting that he has over 100 yards rushing and receiving this week. So total
100 yards
yards,
combined.
he has 100 total yards or more.
Okay. I love that. I'm trying to open like DraftKings right now to see if there's any lines out on that stuff.
There
Um,
definitely is.
let's see real quick. I'm going into Steelers receiving props. George Pickens over 100 is plus 850 right now. Throw $10 on that. That's a good bet right there. See if
Yeah.
I can get a rushing receiving for Jalen Warren. Um,
That's not out yet, but
not
that's
in there
okay.
yet. Not in there yet. But I like that bet. I think that's I said we're not going to make these about bets, and here we are, degenerates. But nonetheless, I like this, and I think it's a good way to kind of think about what could happen. But I feel pretty good about Pickens having a good game over 100 yards, and
Yeah.
I'm excited for what could happen.
And I think we score more than one touchdown. We have one touchdown through 2 weeks. Let's hope we get two at least this week.
All right, simmer down. Only one projection. All right, buddy. Well, we're a little bit long with this episode because we kind of wanted to, cover our bases and talk about the Falcons game. So
Yep.
next episode obviously will be a little bit shorter, but we'll be back with you guys after the Chargers game. Hopefully the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0. We'll see what happens, but nonetheless, always good to talk Steelers, talk real steel, no BS, and
Just the
here
real
we go,
steal.
Steelers, baby.
Yeah, let's bring one home for the home opener. Two on the road. Let's get the third one at home.
For sure. All right. Thank you, everyone. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcasts. Can't wait to hear from you.
All right, thanks everyone. Peace.